because he's being anonymous with us. So James A is with us, and you can't see James, but you should be able to hear him. Hello, James.
Hello.
So there you go. We've got a couple of guests with us this evening. I was going to introduce it with the countdown music, but I totally forgot, so I've missed the joke now. That's it. We were having a laugh about that just before we went up. This is the Wellbeing Show. I'm Noel McDermott, psychotherapist, and this show explores topical issues around psychotherapy and mental health issues. And this evening we've got a couple of people who are coming in to talk to us about Outsidedge Theatre, which is a theatre company that runs also drama workshops. Matt will tell us more about it shortly. But looking at the issues around addiction and recovery. Before I get Matt and Ian to join in, I'm just going to remind you this is a live show. You can join us on Facebook Live. It'd be lovely to see you. I'm just about to go live on my iPad. Here I am. There I am on my iPad. I've gone live, and you can do that as well. So get on Facebook. Well, you have to be at the moment, and go live with us and join in. It'd be great to hear from you about any comments and thoughts that you have about the show as you go through. Also, you can get hold of me on the phone. I've got it here. The number is 07506 319 745. That's +44 if you're outside of the UK. +44 7506 319 745. It'd be lovely to hear from you. If you're worried about the costs calling from outside of the UK, get me on WhatsApp and do a WhatsApp call, and that's fine. It'd be great to have you on the show with questions. I'm joined by somebody who I haven't seen in. When was the last time I saw you, Matt? It was 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 or 3 years ago. So it's been a while.
We worked on a show together.
We did.
And
yeah.
I sort of did a really dreadful job as a producer, and you did a fantastic job as a director.
Well, it was let's say it was fringe theater, so it was it was a pressure cooker of working on a shoestring budget in small spaces with quick turnaround.
Yeah,
so it was a 100% fringe show.
Yeah, but it was great, and it was then I bumped into a guy called David Charkham, I think you know, who said, you know what, Noel, you should have Outsidedge on your radio show, on your Wellbeing show. He said, yeah, great, who are they? And he briefly explained. I said, oh, that sounds good, that sounds really exciting, we'll get them on. And then he said, it'll be a guy called Matt. And I went, Matt? Theatre? I know a Matt in theatre. He said, Matt Steinberg. Oh, him? Blimey, yeah, great. It'd be great to have him, because we live around the corner from each other. We've never visited. Yeah. But this is our first visit to each other's house in the middle of coronavirus.
I know, it's sort of weird that you think the last time we saw each other it was in person. Now we're super socially distant.
I know. How is the lockdown and the coronavirus going for you both?
It's very weird.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to describe it. It's you know, it's like for me at least totally a roller coaster.
Yeah.
We initially, so I'll tell you more about Outsidedge in a bit, but a lot of the work that we do is working with people who are affected by addiction or in recovery and providing free drama activities to support their recovery maintenance. So it's very, you know, it's very much about sort of in-person work with people that we get to know across a long period of time, like James, who's you know, who's with us today on the show. And when we shut our activities down very quickly in response to the government's public health guidance around social distancing. But it meant that it sort of felt like we pulled the plug and didn't know when we were going to start up again. And after sort of the first week of just trying to get our feet on the ground in terms of how the organization, it's a small charity, was going to move forward, we then started to kind of realize, well, actually, we could probably dip our toe back into doing some of the work that we had been previously doing, you know, which were sort of fun improvisation games, a script writing class. And we did an exercise where we opened up sort of a 2-hour video and audio call chat room for people, and also an online survey and emails. And we were calling service users, participants across, you know, 3 or 4 day period, 5-day period, to figure out what their means were. So what did they have? Mobile internet? Did they have Facebook? Did they have, you know, did they have a landline? But also, what did they need during this extraordinary moment? And when we came out of that sort of mapping exercise, we realized that there was an urgent need for us to get back up and running in any way, shape, or form, because people needed a space to gather again. It was it's what people came to us for in the first place. And it wasn't ideal that it was going to be virtual, but it was necessary. And so we've been busier than ever actually over the last month, because we've started new groups to try to accommodate these very long, very boring, very anxious days that people are having.
Right.
And
I'm going to come back to it, because I'd be interested to know how you're managing to do theatre and drama online in virtual spaces. It's a fascinating sort of area. I want to just bring James in and introduce you and get you talking to us, James. You're here because you're a participant of the theatre company and the services that it provides, and partly why you're being anonymous, as in people can't see you, and is that you're also in recovery, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I'm in recovery. Have been for I've been in recovery for about 3 years, and on May the 1st, I'll have 2 years clean time.
Great, congratulations. And so, what's the issue around anonymity then? So people are not seeing you. You don't mind just explaining that, because it will be slightly odd to some people. Some people will get it. I get it. But some people may find it slightly odd. Why the anonymity?
So I guess it's because we're talking about quite personal things like mental health and things which are potentially illegal as well, things like drug abuse. And I think it's important for me to sort of talk openly and freely. And if I had my name and my face sort of plastered all over the internet, I'd probably be a lot more conservative, a lot more cautious with what I'm saying. And therefore, I don't think that I'd be able to kind of give as much as I would like.
So the anonymity, in a sense, protects you?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And when it's interesting, we're not going to challenge it or just accept it for what it is, but it's interesting that we still live in times where people need that anonymity from certain types of things around. And it's maybe one of the things that's unique, I think, to addiction recovery in particular. That some of the issues that we begin to talk about, and I very much identify with them as being somebody who's in recovery myself. I've been in recovery for, I don't know, 11 and a half years, something like that now. And this whole question of anonymity and whether one shares one's status or hides one's status is a big conversation in recovery circles. But it's also something that's pretty unique to addiction and alcoholism recovery. Partly, I think, because of some of the activities that all of us may have engaged in, and also, I think, partly because of the stigma as well that's still attached to it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's the cornerstone of all the 12-step fellowships. It's it's all about anonymity. It's the word that no one can ever pronounce, or at least I can't anyway. I think it gives people. I think with addiction, it's like the route to sort of like getting over it. I mean, it's, like you said, there's so much shame and so much stigma around it. The only place where you can sort of talk, or most people can talk about it sort of openly and honestly, and maybe get to the truth of what is, causing them to be addicts, is with that safety of in an anonymous setting.
Okay, which obviously we're going to protect, so to make it freely available for you to sort of talk in any way that you want to. I should say that both with Matt and with James, we always do. I always do make a point of giving my guests a call before the show and talk about the nature of the show, because I'm a psychotherapist and I'm interested, and it's a sort of a habit of mine to ask very personal questions of people, but that doesn't mean that people have to answer them. It's really okay not to say, I don't want to talk about things. So we had a conversation well before the show started about what are safe boundaries in terms of what areas that we can and can't talk about, which is why we come up with the format that we have tonight, to make sure that it's safe. And I just want to get that message across to people. If you do join us this evening, I want you to be safe as well. So no just jumping on and spilling your guts. This is a public arena, and do take care of yourself. And it's really important that we get that message out to people. Matt, I might come back to you if that's all right. And I'd like to know a little bit more about how you got involved and what the theatre company does. But I guess I'd sort of like to know about you a little bit more as well, and maybe sort of people who are tuning in would like to know a bit about you as well. I mean, I don't want to ask personal questions about whether you're in recovery or not, but that's not why you've come to this company. You've come to this company because you're a professional theatre dub. That's how I knew you 2.5 years ago. Just why I was sort of like, oh, Matt Steinberg involved in. Okay, that's interesting. Right.
Yeah. It's. I mean, so my professional background, at least, is that I was an actor for 10 or 15 years. I'm from Canada originally, so I was working in Canada as an actor in film and television and theater, and I had this sort of inkling that I maybe wanted to leave the profession, because I played a lot of geeks. I'm not sure if you could tell, but like I definitely had a sort of I've been typecast and very I sort of felt like I sort of felt like I played every sort of geek on Canadian television and like all the American shows that were up there as well. And I just sort of, I hit the end of my 20s and I kind of went, I don't know that this is worth the sacrifice of playing the same character over and over and over again. And it was around the same time that I started to think more seriously about directing, and in part because as an actor, I was like a mild control freak, let's say, when rehearsing. And so, you know, at one point I was rehearsing and a director, I kept stopping the scene because I didn't like what I was doing. And the director said to me finally, look, you know, you need to decide who's the director here. Is it you or is it me? And in the back of my head, I kind of went, I think it's me. And that's going to be a problem, because as an actor, you know, you can't self-direct. You have to trust. And you have to think that you have to put yourself into the other person's hands and believe that they're going to guide you through it with advice and bring the whole piece together.
And I don't always wanted to do. Was that like a vocation?
It was the only thing that I ever thought I wanted to do.
Really?
It was completely. So I thought, well, I don't think I want to do that, and I don't really know what that means anymore. So I thought I would come to London on a bit of a vacation, maybe write some law school applications and go to law school. Yeah. But while I was here, I very quickly got into some rehearsal rooms as a sort of an assistant director, and I realized very, very, very quickly that that in some respects my skills were probably better suited to be a director than an actor in many respects. And from that, I started directing, and that's how we sort of met each other. Similar, I mean, so this is the sort of maybe the story of my life. It's really interesting. I always hit a point after, you know, X number of years of doing something and kind of going, I'm not really satisfied with where I'm at. I want more of a challenge. It feels like there's been a plateau. And when that happened a couple of years ago, I started looking at doing the thing that I never thought that I would want to do, which was potentially run a theater company. And I started, on the suggestion of someone, applying for jobs as an artistic director, only to learn how to do the application process. And so when Outsidedge came along, for me, I saw this amazing opportunity to lead a company in a different direction. But it wasn't a time in my life where I thought that's exactly what I want to do, either in terms of being an artistic director or running a theater company that works with people who are affected by addiction. But by going through the recruitment process, it clarified.
Just 1 second, Matt. I've lost the sound for you. I don't know if you can still hear me. So I'm not quite sure if other people can still hear the sound. So James, are you still listening in? James is our technician. Okay, try talking again, Matt. We've still not got any sound from you. So let me message James.
Can you hear the sound from me now?
Yes, I've got you now, James.
Can you hear sound from me?
Have you got Matt?
You've got me?
Yeah.
Mac, you want to try speaking again? Any joy, Matt? What about other James?
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I think what's just happened is I think maybe Matt's connection has gone or something. So I'm going to get...
Can you hear us, Matt? You can hear us, but we can't hear you at the moment.
Just try to reconnect, Matt, if possible. But
Matt, if you can hear us, Matt, just go off and reconnect. James,
Yeah.
you're still with me. James A.
Hello.
Hi, James. We'll have a chat with you while Matt reconnects. It
Sure.
sounds like it looks like Matt's internet connection has dropped out, which is what happens sometimes. Matt was just getting up to the point where he was beginning to talk about how he got into wanting to be an artistic director. You weren't a professional actor, I presume. That's not your story.
Not really. I mean, I did do some acting at a very small, some training at a very small acting school before I went to Outsidedge. I mean, I was using at the time, and actually, I mean, a lot of the people at that other acting school, they were also in recovery, and they kind of gently sort of pushed me into one of, I mean, I sort of did it off my own back, but they sort of suggested going into a 12-step fellowship, which I did. And it was while I was, at a 12-step fellowship that someone sort of told me about, this place called Outsidedge, and they said really good things about it. So I just kind of went there one day, and I really liked them. They seemed to really like me. I kept on going back, and I just sort of got more and more involved with the company. I mean,
and what attracted you to theatre, do you think, in terms of thinking about your recovery? What was the attraction about? Because I can imagine some people being suggested a theatre company in recovery would run a mile, but you were very much attracted to it. Hi, Matt. Welcome back.
Hi, sorry.
It's okay. No, it's just your connection. We were just talking to James about what got him involved, and so what attracted you, James, to the idea of a theatre company of all things?
So I was interested in acting anyway. As I said, I tried to pursue it somewhere else, and I'd realised that actually, before I could sort of become a good actor or a good anything, I had to do something about my addiction, because it was just, it was, ruining my life.
How long have you been active in your addiction for?
So, well, I mean, so it's difficult. I mean, probably I'd say about 10 years.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't like 10 years of like really sort of serious addiction, but by the time I did sort of make it to recovery, it really, I mean, I didn't realize it at the time, but it had become a sort of, it wasn't that I was doing it all the time, but it's just like the types of substances I was using, the sort of the effect that they were having on me. It was completely...
Do you mind talking about that a bit so people get some sense of where you were coming from?
So it was drugs like crystal meth. That's the drug which really sort of once I started using that drug, it's such an addictive drug. It started to sort of cause me to decline quite rapidly.
Sure.
And I think I didn't really admit to myself at the time like what an impact it was having on me, because I think I was too scared to. But I think something in the back of my head was like, look, I needed to get some help. Or I was, without sounding too dramatic, I was going to die, in the fellowship, in the fellowships where, crystal meth is the sort of the main, drug of choice. It's, people pass away. You notice people pass away a lot more than they do in fellowships like NA or AA. It's a serious problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And you, I mean, forgive me for saying, I'm interpreting or projecting a lot onto maybe your accent here, but you don't sound like somebody I would necessarily think would have gone into a crystal meth career.
Well, I mean, see, that's the thing. I mean, so there is a fellowship called Crystal Meth Anonymous in London. It's quite a small fellowship. And I mean, the people that go there, I mean, there's all sorts of people, but some people are psychiatrists. There's a lot of lawyers there. There's a lot of people that are quite, successful in their professional lives, but their personal lives have become, because of the drug, a complete disaster. Yes.
And were you in that mold, the sort of person who seemed on the surface to be getting on with their life?
No, I think probably because I'm still quite young. I'm in my 30s, but when it sort of became a big problem, I was only in sort of my mid or late 20s, and I think because I was quite young, it affected me more perhaps then I wasn't able to hide it, maybe as some older people are able to, if that makes sense.
Cool.
I mean, I was quite, I mean, sort of, for me, because I mean, before I did acting, I was actually originally training to be a lawyer.
Okay.
And I mean, my mum died right in the middle of while I was doing my law degree. And I sort of didn't really, I think because I was quite young, and also it's quite a high pressure environment. It's if you need sort of help in any sort of I don't know, in a sort of the recovery sense, the legal environment's kind of the worst place I would say to be. It's a very competitive, uncaring sort of environment. And, you know, being so young, and also having, you know, sort of other problems as well. Like, I mean, I've got a long sort of history of having ADHD. I mean, when I was growing up, I mean, to be honest with you, like when I was growing up as a kid, my parents actually provided for me really well. I had quite a nice home, quite a nice setting. You know, I grew up just outside London. But, you know, having ADHD, you know, it was a big problem. And it was a big problem. I think it's better understood now. But it's something that, you know, my parents tried to get help for me. And to be honest with you, the help just wasn't really there. I mean, they eventually, after a long time of taking me to sort of mental health services, they did eventually get me to see a psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist put me on Ritalin. And the psychiatrist said, I've seen the notes myself, take the tablet at 4:00 in the evening after school as a trial. And I don't know if you know much about the medication.
I know loads about Ritalin and Concerta and all that. Psychiatrists don't take it at 4:00 in the evening. That's ridiculous.
So it lasts for about 6 hours.
That's right. You'd get no sleep at all.
Well, it's not that. What was happening was like my parents were like, because it was just a trial. When they went back like to the mental health services, they were like, "Oh my God, this is amazing! It's working! Like we ask him to do something, he does it. You know, it's amazing." But when they went back to speak to the school, and the school were like, "We haven't seen any difference," you know. So which they wouldn't be because I wasn't taking it in the morning, and therefore I don't think like my parents were kind of believed, and therefore I think my parents just kind of they gave up like engaging with mental health services. And I think having kind of been given something which worked and then having it sort of taken away, it sort of made the problem even worse. So when I was like 16, basically I ran away from home. And quite, you know, as you can imagine, you know, have ADHD, it wasn't getting treated. A lot of emotional problems as a result of everything. You know, and you know, I was very vulnerable. I mean, I didn't go to university in the traditional sense that where people sort of do their GCSEs and then do their A levels and go straight. I didn't go to uni until I was in my 20s. So I kind of, by the time I got to university, I had an awful lot of baggage, which I kind of hoped that sort of going through university would kind of help to fix. But I think the trouble is because my mother died, as I said, sort of right in the middle of that process, it just made, I think that's when like drugs just came like, oh, you know what, the easy answer. And that's sort of where my problems sort of started really.
I mean, for people who don't know, ADHD is quite a complex condition. It's relatively straightforward to manage if the medication works, but one of the things about it is that it can be quite antisocial, and so it can lead to a lot of isolation from other people, because it's difficult to socialise with people because you're either hyperactive with them, or you're obsessive, or you're just downright sort of losing your temper with people all the time, and you're always forgetting things, and you can't remember things, and you can't diarise things, and people get really annoyed with you, etc., etc. So it can be a very, very lonely condition to have. Was that something like the experience you were having?
Yeah, definitely. I think the loneliness. I mean, I started taking the medication again, and actually, to be honest with you, like it's like the difference it makes to my life. I guess the only way I could describe it would be like you know, if you have to wear reading glasses, it's like either wearing what it's like when you take them off. That's
Really
the
good
difference it makes. And because of like, I mean, yeah, relating to people, being able to sort of like deal with impulses, not interrupting people, patience, all the kind of stuff. Like you say, it makes you a very difficult person to be around, and yeah, it can make you sort of very isolated, and it can be very difficult sometimes to do really simple tasks like writing a letter or something. So with things like employment and stuff, it can also be a really serious issue as well.
It's almost like there's a block just here in your head, isn't there? Something goes there, stopped, but then it just doesn't go in. But the medication suddenly removes that block. I mean, for those that it works for, I think the medication is miraculous, to be honest. It's very interesting, though, because it's essentially the medication is a stimulant.
Yes.
It's amphetamine. That's what it is. You can get non-amphetamine forms of this medication, but mostly it's a stimulant, which is very interesting in the world of addiction, to be using a stimulant. And there's actually quite a big resistance. So I'm sort of glad to hear that you feel comfortable about using it, because I know a lot of people in addiction recovery shy away from it because they're afraid that it might start another addictive cycle. I can say professionally, without doubt, it's non-addictive, this medication.
And I would say on top of that, like it helps me to stop using. I mean, my view on it is the same way as like if you have a heart disease. I mean, there's certain things you can do, maybe have a less stressful lifestyle, change your diet, but sometimes for certain conditions you need the medication. And if I'm going to have to take chemicals, I would much rather take chemicals that are made by a pharmaceutical company than, you know, street drugs.
It's not abusable, this form of medication, but I agree with you that the people I've seen, say, 12-step meetings where it doesn't really work, often you find they have undiagnosed ADHD, and as soon as you get the diagnosis in place and you get appropriate treatment, all the problems around relapse disappear. Just overnight. I mean, there's a number of things that can lead to relapse. Trauma is another one, but ADHD, I think, is one of the biggest ones. And because there's often a comorbidity between the two, ADHD and addiction anyway. So I'm just really excited for you that you've got the diagnosis, you've got the treatment, and you can then work a recovery program around that. So, you know, you've got the whole world to go and fly and sort of spend the rest of your life in. So a fantastic story. Thank you for sharing that, James. I think it's such an important issue in addiction, to get that message out there. I'm really, really pleased that you've come on and talked about it so openly. Are you open to about it, or do you find some prejudice there to you being on meds?
Sorry, just say that again.
Are you this open in the rooms about it when you go to your meeting?
Yeah. I mean, I'm quite an open book, to be honest with you. I mean, sometimes I think I'm too open. Yeah, I find that I normally, if I go into the rooms and, you know, if I keep something, if I don't share, I don't get that good feeling. I mean, the best feeling that you get, I mean, as I said, the Ritalin helps, but actually the best, you know, thing by far out of everything that I've done is being, you know, just being able to share in a room full of people openly and honestly. I think so much of life when we talk, we're not able to do that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, let's bring you back into the show that you're with us. Thanks for logging off and logging on again. It's Virgin Media. I'm going to phone up Richard and have a go at him and tell him.
That'll get us all sued.
It's okay.
I'm refused to disclose which internet provider I have, but it's entirely possible that will happen again. So
yeah. So welcome back on. Thanks for coming back on. So we were just getting to the point where, you know, you were sort of the nerd kid, but the one who went into theatre. You're an actor, and then you went into theatre directing, and then you decided to sort of think about moving into managing a theatre company. Just before I bring you back into telling that story, I just want to remind people this is live. Please join us. Come up with your questions and your thoughts and your shares themselves. You can join us on Facebook Live. You can also give us a call. My number is 07506 319 745. Be lovely to hear from you. If you're calling from outside the UK, it's +44 7506 319 745. You can call us on WhatsApp. Send me a message, or you can drop some messages into Facebook, and then we'll sort of get back to your questions. So, bringing you back into us, Matt. So you decided that you wanted to have a go at running a theatre company. You were filling in these forms, or rather, I think what you said was you decided to give it a go, making the application. You thought that it would be an interesting process.
Yeah.
And this thing called Outsidedge came on.
Yeah, and it's, I think it never dawned on me that I would end up leading a theater company that had been around for 20 years, because that's not the usual progression of of how this is meant to work. But I ended up getting hired to be the artistic director of a theater company which had been founded 20 years prior by a man named Phil Fox, who was an actor and a playwright and a director, and he was also in recovery from heroin addiction and alcoholism. And
Right.
he had set up a theater company to tell the stories that reflected his community, the recovery community in his past. But also he found that by re-engaging with his own craft, he could support his recovery maintenance, and wanted to make that available to other people. And so he set up free drama activities for people who were in recovery. And we've been delivering those for the last 20 years, and also making new work about issues related to addiction for the last 20 years. Phil died about 5 or 6 years ago, really suddenly, of a heart attack, though. And it meant that the theater company, which, and this is sort of a classic story, the founding artistic director, who's the creative vision behind it, suddenly is out of the picture. And the theater company wobbles a bit because it doesn't quite know what it is anymore, because it sort of is embodied by that person.
Yeah.
And so by the time I was hired by the board, the theater company had veered much more towards participatory arts and the recovery maintenance work,
yeah.
Which, as you pointed out earlier, was not my background. And I, James has been open about his recovery journey. I'll be open about mine. I'm not in recovery,
yeah.
So it would never have dawned on me that I would end up leading a theater company and also a small participatory arts charity, which would identify itself as being peer-led, because the founder was in recovery himself and leading support groups. So my role there was very quickly to sort of understand what is the arts, the participatory art side of the work that we do, what is the health and well-being stuff that we do, because I understand the theater side, and try to marry those two things together. And it's been an incredible journey over the last 2 years for me, because I feel like I've now learned about public health commissioning, I've learned about running a charity, I've learned about fundraising with large trusts and foundations outside of the arts. And I've also learned about people's recovery journeys and mental health journeys in a way that I never thought that I would have to do. And I've been very much in the front line of that at certain points as well.
Yes.
And so
amazing history. 20 years ago, this guy decided to start putting these stories on stage and sharing his own experience in a very sort of honest, open and vulnerable way. And we've heard from James. I mean, James is being anonymous with us this evening because there's still exists quite a lot of stigma around these issues, and people need to sort of, even to this day, just think about this guy 20 years ago and what he must have faced when he began, because of course that was well before People, Places, Things was written.
Yeah, totally.
Well before any of the sort of educational stuff that's happened, etc., etc.
And I think that one of the things that the work that's been developed in the company over the last 20 years has been really focused on and is very much celebrated for is the fact that we do say, look, if you're watching an Outsidedge show, you're watching something that's been made by people in recovery, especially when we're working with with people who are who are coming through our participatory groups. And so what we're putting on stage are people that stand up in front of a large audience in this world that is usually anonymous and say, yeah, I'm an addict. Yeah, I'm a heroin user. I'm a crack user. I'm a crystal meth user. I'm an alcoholic. It's all, all of these things that usually we would shy away from, but it lets them live their lives out loud. And I think that, what's sort of interesting is that though James is anonymous here, if we were doing a production, he would stand on stage as a member of that ensemble and identify as that, as part of that community. But the difference is, I suppose, is that there's always the chance to just say, well, I was playing a character, so although it was devised by the company, the story might not totally be me. And that's the one sort of, it's a mechanism, I suppose, within the work that we create with our participants that lets people go, well, it can still be a mask, so I can choose how much I'm willing to share and how much I'm willing to acknowledge that it's my story. And I think that's really important.
Very important point. And here, of course, this is more like reality TV as opposed to a theatre performance. So sort of people are being much more real themselves. And so thinking about, I'd like to sort of maybe take apart what the company does a little bit more so I understand it a little bit better. Because you've mentioned two areas, the participatory arts, and then I guess what must be professional performances, professional theatre performances. Is that right?
Well, it can be very blurry because we take the participatory arts and we put it into a professional context. And so we ask people to we took a production last year to the Vault Festival and we've toured it around, and we asked people to pay to see it. And when the performers, although they might be in recovery and they might be, not professionally trained, let's say, when they stand up there, they are professional actors. So that work bleeds into, let's call it, the more mainstream work we do, which would be something more akin to commissioning scripts from playwrights who may or may not be in recovery.
There's loads of professional actors that were never professionally trained.
Yes, well, yeah, quite actually.
I made a living out of being an actor for 10 years. I never went to acting school, so what made me a professional actor was that somebody paid me for it. I also had an equity card, etc. So, I was in the union, and not that it made much difference really in terms of my life, but yeah, the difference was somebody paid me for it, and I audition and get roles and stuff like that. So, but I'm just because I know you a little bit, and I know you as somebody who's very committed to the art form. You are very skilled at what you do. I know that about you, having worked with you and worked on that piece of theatre with you. I'm interested in you as a professional theatre person coming into this more blurry world, and sort of what that was like for you, because I know you a little bit. I can't imagine it was just a simple thing. I mean, oh, yeah, that's fine. You must have thought about it. It must have been a little bit of a challenge to you.
Yeah, it was terrifying.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Totally terrifying. What are you talking about?
I think it would have been. What am I doing? No.
Yeah, but I mean, it wasn't my comfort zone or my skill set. So
because you had very much come from a background of, you've been an actor, you've done theatre and television.
Yeah. Very text heavy, so
etc.
Yeah. So going into a place where we weren't working on pre-existing plays, where people were making the work up themselves, and sometimes they were using their own stories. I mean, it was a completely different world that I kind of understood, but I didn't. It wasn't my comfort zone.
Yeah.
But again, the theater company has always existed in two spaces: the sort of more traditional form of theater making, and then the participatory side. And again, sometimes they cross over and sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
And when I was hired, I said to the board, my background, I'm not going to lie about it, and you'd be crazy to hire me if you want to just make this a drug and alcohol treatment service.
Yeah.
We have to protect that part of the organization because it's really valuable, it's meaningful, it's the heart of what you do, and it bleeds into or feeds into all of your other work. So I respect it, I protect it, and will build it and develop it. But the area that isn't really functioning right now, or isn't really producing right now, is the theater side, and I know that area. So I'm going to work on that, and I'm going to help you develop that. And if that's your vision for the organization, if that's where you want it to go in the next 20 years, then I'm a really interesting candidate for you. And they bid. And so for the last 2 years, we've been working on both sides, really, in quite a balanced way, actually. We did an off West End production that was about, drugs and chemsex within the gay community. And because of the nature of some of the drugs that were being used, we were able to invite in, one of the participants to sort of, to become part of the conversation in the rehearsal room, which was a great opportunity, for everyone, for the actors to hear, from the horse's mouth, sort of, what that scene was like, but then also the participant to get an understanding of what a professional rehearsal room looks like, because it's very different.
I'm going to bring James in, because James in some ways embodies that transitional space that we're talking about, which is a very interesting sort of, I think, a space that has existed in theatre forever. And it has always been, from the poor theatre onwards, etc. You know, there's always been. Stanislavski, I think, was also working in that sort of space. So the great sort of innovators in theatre have always been in that space, going, what is theatre, and asking that question. And I think that's what you're asking, which is really important. I want to bring James into the conversation, James A. And James, you know, sort of having worked with Matt, and I'm choose my words carefully here. Matt sets high standards, without a doubt, and he's quite a driven sort of artist. And sort of, I'm wondering sort of what that's been like for you to work with, as somebody who came into the project, I suppose, sort of interested in acting, but also because it's part of your recovery. What's that experience been like for you?
So I think having like the high standards is actually really important. It helps. It gives you something to kind of work towards. I mean, the way the organisation is set up, I mean, you don't just sort of go in and like on your first day are expected to sort of perform in front of lots of people. It's a very sort of gentle process. You go to like a sort of a drop-in session, and then if you show sort of regular attendance, you get invited to a sort of a midweek session where they start to teach you stuff. They start to really, you know, and you're expected to turn up regularly and be committed. And then eventually you get to go on to, you know, the company where you sort of are making shows. And for me, that process, I guess, maybe for want of a better word, like you're sort of rewarded for good behavior.
Yeah.
Rewarded. It keeps you, I mean, with recovery, obviously, like with the 12 steps, if you relapse, then, you know, you can keep on relapsing and they'll always have you back. And, you know, I mean, obviously, you know, if you relapsed at Outsidedge, they certainly would support you. They wouldn't chuck you out or anything like that. But I mean, I know for me, like if I relapsed now, all of the work that I've done now, the confidence that I've built to be able to go onto stage, I know it'd all just be completely destroyed. And I'd kind of, just from a personal perspective, be at sort of square one again. And I'm not willing, even though sometimes I'm still tempted to use, I'm just not willing to throw away all of that hard work, and sort of working in an environment where, you know, sort of eventually once they put enough effort into you, they sort of expect, you know, a certain standard from you.
Yeah.
It's a really healthy kind of sort of, pressure isn't the right word, but for want of a better word, a pressure to sort of like, you know, stay good, keep on sort of striving for things.
I mean, you explained it very well. Aspirations are really important.
Definitely.
Desire to improve, and
it's also, sorry to jump in, but it's also that the progression, as James says, the progression is gentle, but it's also led by the participants. So they can come to the drop-in, which is improvisation games, and decide that they don't ever want to progress to present work on stage in front of an audience. And so they can stay there in that group for 20 years. And in fact, we have some that have been there for quite a while with no desire. And I'm not going to say no aspiration, because it's not about aspiration. It's about they have no desire to do a different kind of activity. And that's totally fine. But I think that the key to it is that for some people, and I think that James is probably one of them, the commitment to the personal development, but then also the commitment to not being, and this is going to sound really weird because you're talking about actors, not being selfish and actually giving yourself over to the needs of a group are really, really important, especially in the journey of recovery that they're going through, because the 12-step program is very inward looking, and rightly so, you know, without not disparaging it in any way, but that's one element of the recovery journey. But then what we, I suppose, can help facilitate is an integration into a community of giving, where you give to your scene partner, you give to the ensemble, you give to the project, and it's a group effort. And collectively, you celebrate that. And I think that's a really important element of this as well, is a sort of integration into a new community and a collective effort. And I mean, tell me if I'm sort of wrong about that, James, but
Definitely.
That feels like an essential part of it.
Like I think what you said there, community, that, I mean, it's such an important part. I mean, I think it's so important to like have hobbies, you know, like for a lot of people like me, their hobbies used to be taking drugs and drinking alcohol. So you have to find something to replace that. And for me, like my flavor is acting. You know, it doesn't have to be acting, but for me, that's what it is. And if it is something that you're interested in, or even, you know, think you might be interested in, that's what's so wonderful about it. You can go there and like be with like-minded people. And for me, like, I mean, the reason I first came to Outsidedge, you know, was for quite selfish reasons. I thought, oh, great, a place that will, you know, give me some free acting. But actually, what I've discovered is that, you know, the relationships that I've built up with people, you know, that sort of having just somewhere to go where, like, you sort of, it's a bit like, you know, in Cheers, where they say where, you know, everyone knows your name.
We're not a bar, but we're not a bar.
But not a bar, but without the alcohol, obviously.
quickly.
That is that's such an important thing, and it's something I think only now in my life that I've realised how important it is, and it's something that keeps me happy and keeps me clean.
And I think one thing that interests me about performance arts, and want to sort of look at some of those dynamics, is I mean, there's a quote: "All the world is a stage, and only we are but strutting actors," from Shakespeare. And I think there's a sort of literal truth to that. There's something about engaging in theatre, in my experience, which is very much about practicing how to do life, because the way we live life is very much the type of skills that are acquired in doing theatre and drama. I'm interested in the sort of this whole area now, thinking about sort of this idea of these various communities and then giving voice and public space to subjects and stories that cross over from these very private spheres into these very public spheres. And we're playing about the whole thing tonight, just thinking about how we've set up this whole show. There's a sort of performance element going on about James being sort of anonymous and sort of what that means and the stories. I mean, is there something that's going on in terms of the theatre medium itself, do you think, that is particularly useful around this sort of particular subject area?
Well, I mean, I guess at the heart of a lot of performance or theater is a question of authenticity, and I think audiences are coming to see something authentic, even if it's not about realistic acting. It's about seeing or feeling, experiencing life through performance in a more real way or more authentic way than you either maybe do yourself or that is represented around you. And it's stimulating or eliciting something which feels authentic is really important, and at the heart, I suppose, of what I'm interested in theater. It doesn't necessarily need to look realistic; it just needs to be authentic. And you know, I think that when you're asking someone, or asking someone who's going through something in their life where they may not have been authentic for a long time, or are discovering their authenticity for the first time, is really powerful. And when they're willing to stand up in front of an audience and offer that authenticity, it is palpable. And I think that's a really incredible thing that can happen in a big West End theater, on a massive film set, or also in a small rehearsal room, which is really a group work room for the local authorities' drug and alcohol treatment service, which is where we've been working for the last 20 years. And it doesn't really matter where that is, you feel it. When I was in my first week in post, David Sharkin, we were talking about earlier, who sort of put us in contact about the show. He's our greatest champion. He's he's an amazing guy, and he offered to take me to an AA meeting in our building. And I went to my first AA meeting, and I got to say, it was like the best piece of theater I had seen in like years, because it was people standing up and being really brave and honest with each other, and like walking right to that dangerous point, like cliff's edge, but being lifted up and supported by the group. And I thought, well, that's theater. And if that's what I'm now running, I'm not running an AA group, but if people that I'm in contact with, our participants, are that brave and that authentic, this is going to be easy, because you can't get that out of an actor.
No, I mean, it is interesting. There's sort of much of acting training is about stopping people from trying to act. It's actually about teaching people to be authentic and present in the moment, but also encompass certain types of technical skills, which is what James has been talking about. James, I'm interested in your emotional reaction to this idea of authenticity. I'm guessing, as a recovering addict, authenticity at one point in life would have been quite terrifying. I'm wondering what that journey has been like for you, particularly having to go on stage and be authentic. But what has it been like? Because I guess for many years you were trying to avoid yourself when you were using.
I mean, I think, oh gosh, I mean, like we did a piece recently, a few months ago, and actually, for me, it was the most personally rewarding piece of theatre I had done. Normally, I'm quite new to acting still, and I've still got this thing where I go on stage and I want to be good and I want to impress and I want, But this play that we did, it was called See Me Now. And actually, there's sort of, although there was some slight variance, but it was pretty much us sort of telling stories that were true. And I by doing that, I didn't really care. I think it was the first time I'd been on stage, and actually I didn't care whether I was good. I didn't care whether I was bad. I think maybe because the words I was speaking pretty much were my own, so therefore I didn't have that sort of feeling. Oh, have I, said it the way that the writer would have intended me to say it? Because no one could say that because they were my own, and it was a very liberating, experience. And I think actually probably the thing, funnily enough, that I took away from doing that performance was that sort of feeling of not caring, just going out there. I mean, I'm not saying not putting any effort in, but just not caring whether people enjoyed it or not. I mean, I hope that they do, but it was something that I kind of got from it. But I think also there was a feeling of sort of saying stuff that maybe was sort of like concealed in me sort of for a long time. There was a feeling, I got a sense from the room that there was a kind of feeling that there was some people like, it kind of touched them. And you kind of, that was nice.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if I answered the question, but yeah.
Absolutely beautifully. I want to sort of probe a bit more around that, but I also want to come back to some things Matt was saying about selfishness and non-selfishness, because I guess the idea of we think of actors sort of as this Hollywood type actor where, there's this a strong personal individual that goes off and makes millions, but that's not the reality of acting for most people.
Well, I don't know. I mean, no, it's not. I mean, I love actors. I am one. So my closest friends are actors, but there's definitely it's really complicated. Like we accuse actors of being really volatile personality types, and they are, because they have to be. It's like taking someone, making them a soldier, and then being really baffled after they come back from war as to why they have violent tendencies. Like we spend time, we spend time breaking actors down in some respects, so that they can access that volatile emotion and find it really fast, and then spew it out really strongly, either love, hate, anger, like whatever. And so it's not surprising that as human beings, then, especially in an environment where we've really encouraged that, that they are complicated. They can be complicated individuals. Now, some of them are really, really grounded and centered and know how to, and can just turn it off, but others can't. And also, we put a spotlight on them. I mean, literally, we put spotlights on them, and we say, you're center stage and you're important. And their great skill is often, on stage at least, although also in film, is to somehow change the temperature in the room by something which we don't understand. It's magnetism. It's something else, and it is something that is in some people it's totally inherent, and other people they really have to work on it and learn it, and some of them never get it. But that's special. It is special. But it also means that there's some complicated stuff that they need to protect, I guess, to ensure that their tools and that their instrument is ready to be used. And it's very, very interesting working with people who are in recovery, because there's a lot of similarities, to be totally honest. I had a participant once say to me, you just understand addicts, and I said, no, I just understand actors. And it's a group that is, for some reason, I've been quite surprised at how similar the sort of
neurotic, vulnerable, open, loving.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't mean it in a pejorative or negative way because it's yeah, but you know, but it's also why I think there's such incredible there's such incredible amounts of substance misuse within the acting community or the entertainment industry, because it is this like really big emotions, really big experiences that people don't always know how to deal with. And so you finish a play and most people go to the pub afterwards. Most actors go to the pub and they drink. And
I just did it during the acting myself. So
yeah, or I mean, there's great
afterwards. I was just,
but even people that wouldn't say that they had like a drinking problem, actors that wouldn't have a drinking problem. There's this sort of storied history of these great actors. How drunk can you be before you can't play Hamlet, or how drunk can you be before you can't go on stage anymore? And it's this sort of, it's like a badge of honor. And I guess it kind of makes sense, because what you're putting your body through is, when you perform, it's akin to being in a mild car accident. So the adrenaline that's going through your system, the chemicals are really, and the dopamine hit that you get from feeling like, yeah, I did that, I'm incredible, I'm on top of the world. I mean, it's a drug. So it's one of the reasons I think people find it really difficult to leave the entertainment industry, because you're constantly chasing this thing that makes you feel really good and then makes you feel really bad and makes you feel really good and makes you feel really bad. So the roller coaster is not dissimilar, I suppose, to what some people who have addiction issues are experiencing as well.
And I think there's something interesting, and sort of want to bring James back into the conversation about. There's something around this authenticity, but there's also something around how acting training is about allowing people to be more authentic and open and vulnerable in front of other people, and to do it in a staged manner, but that doesn't look staged. So you're sort of teaching actors how to sort of engage in a particular type of relationship with the audience that allows the audience in, while the actor can hold on to a character and script and all of those things. And in some ways, I mean, I would say, and I'm wondering what you think about this, James, but in some ways that's very similar to the sort of process of recovery. That you go into sort of recovery as a using addict, and you stopped, and then you go into, and actually the process of particularly 12-step recovery is learning a whole bunch of new skills about how to be a coherent human being who can relate to other coherent human beings.
I think it's about like finding the sort of balance. So what you want out of, like, when you're acting, or even just for life in varying degrees, is that you want to get to that point where you can be open enough that you get to when you get drunk without getting too drunk. And you can...
Oh no, have we lost James? Have we lost James A? You might come back to us. We'll leave our technician to give him a call and find out what's going on. So he was just saying, I think James was making a really relevant point there about that you want to get to this point where you feel relaxed enough, he said drunk enough, to be able to engage with people. Have we got him back?
Yeah, I'm here.
Great. So you were just saying, you want to get drunk enough but not too drunk.
Yeah, it's kind of like, in a way, you sort of, recovery and alcohol, in a way, it's like they're two different tools that kind of get to the same sort of thing. I mean, normally when people have a drink, it's because they want to cheer themselves up. Yeah. And it's the same with recovery.
Okay. Yeah.
I think what the difference is that recovery just takes a bit more effort, and it's a more sort of an ongoing thing. It's not something that you can just, it's not as simple, but I think the rewards that you get from it, like anything normally where you put more effort in, are much greater.
Yeah. And in terms of then bringing your recovery into this theatre company, are you able to say the sort of things that have been beneficial in terms of your recovery, and where the crossovers are between your recovery and your acting? I'm presuming that you'll have some interest maybe in going on to do other acting as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that, like I sort of said earlier on in the conversation, before I need to be healthy enough to do any job. If I'm an alcoholic and an addict, I'm not going to be able to do anything. and I need to be able to get over that before I can progress with my life, whatever field it is. Yeah, I would like to get into acting. So that's what's so wonderful for me about Outsidedge, is it's a place where I can sort of recover, but also at the same time grow as an actor. And I just think, even for if you're not in recovery, I mean, sort of from my experience in other places, is it, you know, the acting world can also be quite a brutal place.
Yes.
Outsidedge isn't like that. It's such a gentle, kind, loving place, which is what I think is the environment you need to sort of become a good actor. I mean, don't get me wrong, like, you know, they'll push you, you know, in a gentle, once you get up through, you know, the sort of classes, but it's supportive, like, all the way.
That's fantastic, and I sort of, you know, we're getting to the point. I want to sort of think about, if I was an audience member as well, why would I come to Outsidedge? What's the draw for me? Before we get into that, I'm just going to sort of remind people this is a live show. We'd love to hear from you if you're watching us, and there's a couple of ways that you can contribute. Oh, David is with us. Hello, David. Welcome. Outsidedge, groundbreaking theatre company, proud to be involved. We're proud to have you with us, David. Thanks for joining us.
He heard his name somewhere on the web.
Yeah, he's heard his ears with, and on he came. We were saying dreadful things about you, David. We hope you haven't been here for the whole show, because you know, you'd be leaving crying. But great to have you with us. Yeah. So I just want to. We're live. David's just joined us. You know, so you can drop a comment into Facebook, or you can give us a call on 07506 319 745. That's +44 if you're calling from outside the UK. So +44 7506 319 745. So it'd be lovely to hear from you. I was posing the question to Matt, and maybe putting you on the spot a little bit, about why should people bother to come and see this? If it's because it all sounds a bit like, oh, isn't it just helping people out in recovery? Why would I want to come and see a show about that? I know how you're going to answer it, but I want to give you the opportunity to. Before I give you the opportunity to do that, answer that question, I want to bring in the fact that you've got a competition going on at the moment. Yeah, tell us about that competition.
So as I said, we turned 20 years old this year, and to celebrate this, we decided that we were going to run a script competition and name it after our founding artistic director, who I was speaking about before, Phil Fox. So we've launched a really massive script competition called the Phil Fox Award for Playwriting, and our hope is that we will stimulate playwrights across the UK to write us the next People, Places and Things, which is to say the next great, incredible script about issues related to addiction. And we're defining that as any sort of addictive behavior. So it can be, social media addiction, heroin addiction, alcoholism, anything that, that relates to addictive behaviors. But also we're interested in what causes addiction. So as long as the playwright can justify that it's about issues related to addiction, so it could be the supply chain for drugs, it can be about the mechanisms in the brain that are stimulated when you're doing online gambling. They have to be able to justify the decision for why this play might be suitable for our script competition, and it has to be original. Right. And if it's all those things and it wins, then then the playwright gets £6,000 to either continue to develop that play or work with us to find a more producible script through a commission process. But it's an incredible panel of judges that we've got. We have Enda Walsh, who's a Tony Award-winning playwright, who's chairing the award. Simon Stevens, who's a Tony Award and Olivier Award-winning playwright, who wrote the state adaptation of Curious Incident of the Dog at Midnight. He's judging the award. Barbara Broccoli, who's the James Bond film producer, is judging the award. Matt Applewhite, who is the managing director and commissioning editor of Nick Kern Books, which is one of the biggest play publishers in the UK, is judging. Indy Rubasingham, who runs the Kiln Theatre in Kilburn, is judging. Denise Goth is judging it. She was in Peaceful Places and Things and won the Olivier Award. I'm judging it. I'm incredible. And also our playwright tutor, Sonia Hale, is judging it as well, who used to be a service user. So we have people with lived experience on the panel. We've got the people like the creme de la creme of the industry. So we are asking playwrights at any level of experience to send us their scripts, and you can find information about that on our website, www.edgetc.org.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Sounds like a fantastic opportunity and perfect for lockdown Britain.
Exactly.
If you're a playwright, now is the time to write this bloody play and get it out there. And David was asking what's the number to call on. It should be flashing on the screen, but if it's not, David, it's 07506 319 745. That's 07506 319 745. Maybe Jen or James, the technician, can pop it into the dialogue box so people can see it. So do give us a call, David, if that means you're going to call in. It'd be lovely to hear from you, and we can get you on. So 07506 319 745. So this is a fantastic opportunity for a new piece of this, and we were talking about this in our research chat about the need for the next sort of big production, next seriously important production in terms of addiction and what's going on around there. So it's a great opportunity. Here is David Charkham as we speak. David, how are you? Have you? Let me get you on. Hang on, let me put you on the speaker. We're still live, David. Let's get you on the speaker. You can have a chat with us. And so there we go, on the speaker. Hi, David.
Good evening.
Hi, David.
Yes. What? Hi. Good evening. Okay. Am I on?
Yep.
Good evening. Noel, Matt. Matt, my ears were burning. What did you say? Was it my internet radar bell?
Yes.
I'm so.
Oh, we're getting.
I'm gonna meet.
Yeah, you're giving us some feedback. You need to turn your computer off. Right, now the echo is gone. So you can, I'm going to put you back on speaker now, David, and you'll get back on the show. So one of the rules about going on live is that you turn every other source of sound off. So here you are, David. Welcome. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. This is fantastic to see. It's always fantastic to see you guys, but it's even more fantastic to hear you talking about the Outsidedge theatre. So, as I heard, just I was on my way to bed, and I saw this, and I'm just, it's brilliant, and it's a great idea.
David, tell us about your involvement with Outsidedge. Why are you such a sort of advocate of it?
Because I started doing some kind of drama. Phil Fox and I were both out of work actors in early recovery.
Yeah.
It could have been almost 30 years ago when we met. Probably 30 years ago when we met. And Phil, I guess we wanted to keep our hand in as performers. We didn't really know what to do, and we kind of burnt our bridges. And Phil started to do this kind of workshop, and there were about 3 or 4 of us that we had no idea where it would go. It was just to keep our hand in, and that's how he kind of started to develop the idea of a theatre company. And then I went off and did my thing, and he kept doing his thing. But then he started to take to work with addicts, with drama, and as far as I recall, when Sharp started, the Chemical Dependency Centre in Red Crypt Gardens, he went in to do a workshop early one weekday morning, and Mark Rylance came and saw it. And there's in the Outsidedge archives, there is the most incredible letter written by Mark Rylance, who he said, "What I witnessed is the truest form of community theatre I've ever seen." Mm-hmm. So it started. It then went into a sort of onto a deeper level. I mean, it started to take off from that moment. So I've been involved. I've been a fan, and I've been a kind of backroom boy. Well, for over 20 years, and I've managed to get a couple of friends of mine involved who have become patrons, and But to see you guys talking about it and this amazing opportunity for a new playwright is really exciting. I mean, you don't hear about opportunities like these.
No,
much
it's
these
really,
days.
really exciting, sort of new piece of theatre. I was just going on to ask Matt, and if I might sort of impose on your time a little bit more, David, before we let you get to bed. I was just going on to ask Matt as to, why should an audience pay money to come and see shows by Outsidedge? And I suppose the question I'm asking, put it bluntly, is this real theatre? Is it worth paying money for?
Matt, do you want to answer that first?
Well, I think, yeah, I think it depends because we do such a range of work. So I think that the work that we do, which we toured at, let's say, treatment facilities, I think that a mainstream paying audience who's going to the National to see a celebrity would be disappointed by the style of the work, because what we're presenting are the authentic voices of the people experiencing the subject matter, and it's rough and it's and it's unruly, it's messy, and it's really impactful, and someone who is touched by addiction will find it really impactful, but it's not necessarily for mainstream consumption. The other work that we do with with some of our participants that's much more polished and is much more about, it's about our taking into consideration what the audience is looking for. So we go out there and we create a piece of theater, let's say, with our participants, but we know that it's for a mainstream audience. Well, what is the mainstream audience interested in? Why would they come and pay to see our production? Well, it's probably because it's about an issue related to substance misuse. So we don't hide that. We try to get to the heart of what the people want to see. Similarly, if we're developing a script about issues related to substance misuse and we want to try to get the biggest named actor into the show, then obviously that's a completely different sell as well. And so our marketing is always different for each of them, right?
So there's different products that you have for different audiences.
Yeah, completely. And I think that in the same way that a theater company that has that has a show for young people and also a musical in the same season, and also a classic, Shakespeare, and also a piece of new writing, they've got different audiences, and you try to bring them together as much as you can. But that's what programming is. I mean, it's a rich tapestry of options, and you try to find the right audience for the options. You try to develop the best option possible. So it's a really exciting, provocation in some respects, because our audience is much more diverse than most other theater companies, because we're going into places with vulnerable adults.
Yeah. And what's your answer, James? Why do you think people should come and see the shows?
Well, I'm just thinking about some of the last few productions that we put on. We did a show in October, and it was part of, I think it was the Dare Festival, and it was actually to do with money and addiction.
Yeah.
And it was loosely, actually, I'm not sure if I can say it's about the Sacklers?
Well, it was called A Very Happy Scrappy
It was,
Family
sorry.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
But
well, I've said it now, so.
It's not based on reality. That's the key.
That's right.
No Sacklers were represented or harmed in the making of the piece.
And it was a different Sackler anyway, wasn't it?
Of course.
Yeah. But it was. I won't go in the ins and outs of the show, but actually, it was a piece of work that I was so proud to take part in, because it was so original. It was such a good idea. It was I would love to have actually have seen it. I was disappointed that I was in it because I didn't get to see it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So with that piece, for instance, what we did is we took all of the sorry.
1 second. I was going to ask David, why do you think people should come and see Outsidedge? You've had 3 different answers, and I'm going to get this answer off you, David, and then I'm going to let you go, if that's okay.
Right. 3 different. I think there is 2 sort of areas of Outsidedge. There is the area, as Matt has talked about going into treatment settings and doing productions that particularly will connect with that that audience, and that's one arm. But then there is the what I would call the commercial arm, like the Bill W. play, and also what was the play, Matt, at the Soho Theatre that was such a great hit?
Tumulus, yeah. So yeah, we were chatting about that before. So that was the one that was about chemsex and drug addiction in the gay community that we did last year. At Soho Theatre.
Tracy Quinlan has just said on the chat on Facebook. Tracy Quinlan said it's definitely worth going to see an Outsidedge theatre production. I went to see the chemsex at Soho Theatre last year. It was beautifully presented. It's edgy as well as educational, is what she's saying.
That's a great answer. She said exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So why should people pay? Because it's extraordinary theatre, because it's topical, and if we take just general, I mean, the Vault, when you did the performance at the Vault Festival, now I don't know how many productions and mini productions go on. It's like an Edinburgh Festival, all crammed under the wonderful arches at Waterloo Station. There were hundreds of performances, and Outsidedge got voted into the best 5, was it, Matt? So
yeah, the Evening Standard and what I think was What's on Stage listed us as the top 10, one of the top 10 shows to see in the festival. Yeah.
So hopefully that kind of answers why should people pay, because it's groundbreaking, and also if you're using a subject connected to addiction, I mean, if you think about I think the statistics, Lucy, are, is it 1 in 4 people are affected? It doesn't mean to say 1 in 4 are actually active, but the 1 in 4 people are affected by addiction. So it's topical.
Yeah, brilliant, David. I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for joining us.
Bye, David.
Say goodbye to David for the evening.
Bye, David.
Bye.
Hi, it was nice. I was just literally, thank you. I was just passing, but hey, Outsidedge is groundbreaking. Outsidedge is the only set up like this in the United Kingdom, and hopefully more people will hear about it. So,
brilliant.
Gentlemen, I wish you a good night.
Good night, David. Lovely to have you. So that was nice.
He's our biggest champion. It's incredible. We're incredibly fortunate to have him and some other supporters that have been with us for 20 years, and frankly they have helped a very, very small, obviously vulnerable charity. These small theatre companies are vulnerable, survive 20 years. It's an extraordinary story to know that a theatre company has survived 20 years, and it's because of people like David.
Great. Sort of having worked in small and medium scale theatre for many, many years, I know how difficult it is, and how many of them that I worked in that no longer exist, very sadly. So it's good that it has this longevity. I'm going to come back and maybe answer the question myself as well, as to why should people come and see this type of theatre. And I think it comes back to sort of conversation, partly the conversation we're having this evening, but also partly the conversation you and I had when I gave you the opportunity to talk to me before the show earlier on in the week, Matt. And the answer is something in your journey, something about what your experience was and how you described your experience of getting involved in Outsidedge and what happened to you and the process that you went through. And tell me if I'm wrong and misrepresenting you, but I think you said something along the lines of, you were really surprised at the impact that it had upon you, because you'd come from quite a traditional, serious, professional theatre background, and you were a bit dubious about this whole stuff, particularly the participatory arts. But actually what happened was that you were totally blown away by the experiences that you got to know and what it did and how it could be represented in the theatrical art form. And the stories and the power of the stories and the power to communicate to an audience, very, very important issues that were very authentic, maybe raw and unpolished, but it actually profoundly touched you as a professional within the theatre arts. Is that correct? You said something like that, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, you were breaking up slightly because of my dodgy internet, but I think I got most of what you said, and I think I agree with most of it. But just in case you said something that was really terrible that's now recorded and I've agreed to, I'm just going to say that my internet was jumping.
I guess I'm being an advocate here because, on my journey in theatre was in some way similar to your journey in theatre. And I started off as, you know, an actor and director, and that was it. And I was mainstream. That's what I wanted to do. And I stumbled onto sort of community arts and getting people involved in doing theatre in particular who had never been on stage before, but had very, very important stories to tell. And it became really important to tell those stories because they were unique and interesting aspects of human experience. That sort of, and I mean, I think that is what theatre is about, is telling really important stories. And you know, putting those up in a way that makes them accessible to a mainstream audience. And I think that for me, what happened was it really re-engaged me when I worked in these community arts projects. It really re-engaged me with why I was doing theatre in the first place. And the reason I was doing theatre in the first place was to connect people emotionally, cognitively, in a live setting. Where they came out of that live setting bigger than they'd gone in.
Yeah. So I think when we were sort of chatting earlier in the week, I said, you know, when I was working, let's call it in mainstream theater, so everything up to 2 years ago, I went around and I said, I think theater can change the world. And I shouted that, you know, I really was sort of thought, yeah, but actually I really liked it. I mean, you know, like it's a very selfish. It was a very selfish response to it. I've always really liked theater. I really like the arts, and I think it's really important because I like doing it. You know, so I advocate strongly for it, and I did in some way. I believe it can change the world. But I think I really just meant I like doing it, and I need to protect it and make sure that it's always available so that I can do it, and I can access it as an audience member. And you know, when I took over this job in the first week, I went to all of the drama activities that we run across the week. And I saw that actually this thing that I loved and that I've been advocating for, you know, at that point, 35 years, it did actually change the world. It just changed it in a different way. It wasn't going to change the entire Royal Opera House at once, and they were going to storm Covent Garden and, you know, and overturn the government. It was that one guy who was living in a hostel who was thinking about killing himself on the Monday. When he came to us on the Tuesday, he left feeling a bit better. And he came back the next week and hadn't killed himself. And we weren't the cause that he remained alive, but we were part of a network of positive experiences that he could access that kept him going. And you know, and I think that that's the case for a lot of the people that, you know, that access our free activities. So, you know, now that we've moved everything online, for instance, we had one guy a couple of weeks ago say that he was really grateful to have this safe space because it was keeping him sane. And it was keeping him alive. And I mean, that is a literal quote. I mean, I couldn't make that up for fundraising copy. It was the most powerful thing to hear. And we get that feedback consistently at the end of our activities. Yeah. And that will inspire anyone to ensure that this work is accessible to people, not just people that can afford to pay for it, but the people that actually cannot afford to pay for it and didn't even know it was available to them as an activity, as a hobby. It's necessary that those people have access to it. And so we as an organization, and I suppose I now as an artist, advocate for that because I do believe it changes the world. I think that the arts can change the world. It just doesn't change it the way I thought it was going to change it.
Never changes in the way we thought, does it? It sort of has its own magic and way of doing things, and that's fine. And it's good to hear the humility in that as well. So as we're getting towards the end of the show, I want to talk about what you're currently doing, because you just mentioned you've managed to keep the work going, go online, and I think it's really important to start talking about that and let people know what you're actually doing at the moment as we go through the coronavirus lockdown, and what the plans are when we come out, and also how people might be able to get in touch and access some of the services that you're currently sort of offering. So how are you, I mean, sort of the mind boggles, how are you doing theatre sort of through Zoom?
through Zoom and through phone calls. So,
Right.
You know,
how are you?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it means that we're doing a lot of acting for film and radio in some respects. So we're finding ways to use the technology creatively and also accessibly. So obviously, some of the people we work with are digitally excluded. They don't have mobile Wi-Fi or tablets, so they have to be able to call in. And so we have to get people that are on the telephone to work with people that are using a video. And that's very complicated, but our facilitators are very skilled. So we're finding innovative ways to do it. and we don't have all the answers. We're finding our way through this like all the other organizations. But we've been able to restart every single one of our groups that was meant to be running right now, which is extraordinary. So we have a drop-in drama group, which does improvisations. We have a script writing group who writes scripts. They're writing monologues and radio plays. We have an intermediate group who's doing acting for camera and microphone. We have started a theater club. So all the free theater that's out there right now from the National, from the Globe, we give the participants the link that they can watch the show for free. And then on the Tuesday evening, we have a virtual theater club where people can Zoom in through video or phone in. We do a Q&A with one of the cast members, the creative team. So we've had the artistic director from the Globe come talk to us, one of the stars from One Man, Two Governors, one of the stars from Jane Eyre. We've got the artistic director and movement director from a show at the Orange Tree coming next Tuesday. We have a peer check-in every Friday now, so a space that's held by a peer mentor where people can come and just talk about bread making recipes or relapse prevention techniques. I mean, it's their space. We're restarting our women's drama group in a couple weeks. So the one group that we haven't developed a project for is the group that does outward-facing performances, because in part we didn't have a theater festival anymore to go to in June, which we were sort of trying to work towards. And the next project we have, fortunately, it was always going to have a digital component to it, so it looks like we could probably still move towards that. But the technical side of it is still something that we need to sort of to work through. But we're fundraising at the moment to try to get as many activities up and running as possible, because people need things to do during the week. So we're trying to work with another recovery-based dance organization that's outside of London to create a dance component to our offering. And we're trying to think about ways that we can bring in theater design, and what would that look like over the coming months. And because we don't know when this is going to end, we just want to get as many different ideas and possibilities out there that cover as many elements of well-being and of creativity within theater and drama as we possibly can, because our uptake is really, really high. We have people now coming, which is great, that haven't been to us in years, because geography is a barrier for accessing our service for some people because of mental health issues, or just frankly, London is a big city. So they're coming back and they're re-engaging with the activities. They're coming more consistently than they ever have before. But also, we've just opened up our induction process again. So anyone from, let's be honest, around the world, because of how we work now, for at least the foreseeable future, can come and join in our activities. So if you go to our website, there's a register your interest to join in our free drama activities. And there's really, you just fill out a form, someone will give you a call, they'll go through an induction form with you, so we can go through some safeguarding and risk assessment stuff and give you information about what you'll do during the activity, and then you can come and join us. So we encourage everyone to come. Our only rule, it's like literally the only rule that we have, along with like be nice to each other and supportive and be generous, is that you have to be abstinent on the day.
Right.
So this was always really easy when we were working in person. So there's a certain level of trust, I suppose, now, because we can't do a breathalyzer and we can't look in your eyes. But our expectation is, because this is a peer support space where people that are working towards harm reduction or abstinent goals are coming to support each other's goals, that you will come and you will not have used up to the point of the activity. Now, if you go and use afterwards, we don't judge you. We don't encourage you to do that by any means. But we wouldn't kick you out of the activity because you had done that. So the key to it is that the goal in your day is that activity, and hopefully that will sustain you beyond that. But we just need you to be sober for the activity.
And let's just be clear, you used a couple of times so that people are clear about the sort of philosophy of the organisation. You said harm reduction or abstinence, and that's fine. You don't have to be in an abstinence-based peer-to-peer network.
You have to, so you because you have to be abstinent on the day. Again, it doesn't matter what you did the night before. Yeah. And if you're on low-level scripts, it's okay as well. So if you're sort of on methadone, we can still work with you, consider that having used in the same way that James is taking medication for ADHD, so we would never say, well, that's methamphetamine, or whatever. Like when amphetamine, we don't have that kind of bar. The history of the organization is very much abstinence based, but we work with a lot of different services and a lot of different people at different stages in their journey. and we need to be a safe. We need to hold a safe space for them to say, look, I'm drinking now, not now like today or in the workshop, but that's happening, and people incredibly come around them and say, okay, it's cool. Let's just try not doing it today.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens, and that's important.
And I just want to bring up, we've got about 5 minutes left, so we've got time. I don't want to finish on this note, but I do want to bring it in. How is all this funded, and how can we, the public, help with this?
We have a COVID-19 emergency appeal right now on our website. So if anyone wants to donate, just go on to www.edtech, and it should be very clear on the website how to donate. So
you're just breaking up. I don't know if you can still hear me, Matt, but there's your connection was going. So Matt was just saying that currently, to support all these amazing services during these really, really stressful times.
So we're supported at the moment by Lloyds Bank. Oh.
Matt, can you hear me? You sort of broke up.
Yep.
So you're going to have to start that all again because you went into that.
Did you get my donate to us appeal?
So go back to the donate to us appeal.
So we have a COVID-19 emergency appeal right now. So if you go to our website, www.edgetc.org, it's very clear on the website how to donate, and please gift aid so that we get a little bit of extra money from your taxes that you don't actually pay, but the government does. But we have contracts with West London local authorities. So 3 local authorities in West London pay us for some of these services to support people in the local community, but those groups are open to anyone. We're also funded by the Mayor of London right now to do taster sessions, drama taster sessions in treatment facilities around London. And we're funded by Lloyds Bank Foundation and a couple other foundations for our sort of core costs. The Tampon Tax Community Fund is funding our women's drama group. There's a consortium of other people that are other trusts and foundations that are supporting some of our other work, and then a lot of individual giving. And we earn some money working in private treatment facilities and box office. So it's varied.
And so we're going to have to finish. We're just about at the end of the show. We probably are at the end of the show, but I'm going to run over because I want to hear some final thoughts and feelings from you both. We've put your website up on the chat, so please do go on there and give these guys loads of money. Lots and lots to keep this fantastic work going. I just want to give you a moment, maybe yourself, James, first, and then you, Matt, second. A couple of thoughts and feelings about Outsidedge and maybe the impact upon yourself personally. What does it mean to you?
I think, just during this show, as always, whenever I talk about Outsidedge, it's just a reminder how lucky I am to have this space. What a wonderful, important, useful thing it is for so many people. And yeah, I just love it. That's all I'm going to say. I love it.
Right. Matt, are there sort of anything, maybe more personal things that you want? You've done your job selling the company really well. I have been very impressed by your ability to do that. For you, Matt, the person, what would you say personally as the sort of last couple of sentences before we end the show?
So it's very difficult because of the size of the organization to differentiate myself and my own thing, my own journey, I suppose, with the journey of the organization. And that was something that I never expected. As when I started this going, I think I might want to be an artistic director. I didn't realize how personal it gets and how very complicated that becomes at certain points, because you start going, what am I talking about now? Am I talking about me, or am I talking about the organization? Am I selling what is best for the organization? Am I moving in that direction, or have I melded it into this place where I have ownership over it? And I think that there's always a tension there, and it's something that I'm aware of and trying to be cleaner as clean as I can possibly be with. But it's a difficult question to answer. But I guess it's also indicative of my relationship with the company and what I think about the company, which is that it's incredibly, on a daily, every single day, surprising me on a personal level, because it's challenging me personally, it's affecting me personally, it's driving me fucking nuts sometimes, but it's also filling me with the most incredible love. So it's a bit like having, you know, a new family member, which you didn't quite expect to have, and also a kind of plant that you like a lot, but sometimes isn't quite as watered as you'd like. I mean, I think there's a lot of different metaphors you can play with here, but you can understand it's complicated, right? Like it's a complicated situation. But I couldn't, you know, I'm so happy that I've got it.
I'm now feeling like all my plants are looking at me. Bugger. So that's a beautiful note on which to finish. Thank you both so much for joining us. I think it's been a wonderful show. It's been absolutely fantastic to hear you. See you all next week.